All right, today we are diving into one of the most fascinating and, frankly, baffling cosmic puzzles of our lifetime, the bizarre case of Oumuamua. This is the story of our very first visitor from another star system and the mysterious push that seemed to break all the rules of physics. And to kick things off, we've got this incredible quote from a thinker named Zoran, who's going to be our guide through this whole thing. And he just nails it. This story isn't just about a weird rock in space. It's really about us, about how we react when the universe throws us a total curveball, and the tough choices that forces us to make. Okay, so let's set the scene. So, back in 2017, for the first time ever, we spotted something that was not from around here. It was named Oumuamua, a Hawaiian word that means scout, which is pretty fitting, right? It came tumbling into our solar system from the vast emptiness of interstellar space. And astronomers were ecstatic. They tracked it, they plotted its course, and they fully expected it to play by the rules, to just bend to the massive gravity of our sun like everything else does. But Oumuamua, well, it had other plans. And this is where the story gets really, really weird. It all started with this tiny little anomaly in its trajectory, a phantom push. Here's the deal. The object was speeding up. As it was leaving our solar system, it was moving away from the sun faster than gravity said it should. Scientists have a formal name for this, non-gravitational acceleration. But let's call it what it is, the phantom push. It's kind of like, imagine you give a kid a big push on a swing. You let go, and then the swing just keeps going higher and higher all by itself. It makes absolutely no sense. That's the level of weird we're talking about here. But it wasn't just that it was accelerating. It was how. This wasn't some messy, chaotic burst of speed. Nope, it was this incredibly gentle, smooth, continuous push. And it was aimed perfectly, pointing directly away from the sun. Think of a sail on a boat, catching a perfectly steady wind. That's the kind of precision we saw. And that precision is exactly what made the most obvious explanation completely fall apart. So the obvious answer was it must be a comet, right? Comets are just dirty snowballs. They get near the sun, they heat up, and they shoot out jets of gas and dust. That outgassing acts like a tiny rocket engine. Problem solved. Except, not even close. A comet's push is messy. It's uneven. It makes the comet wobble and tumble. And most importantly, you can see it. It creates a huge, visible tail. Oumuamua had, well, none of that. Zero tail. No gas detected. No wobble. Just this silent, graceful, and totally inexplicable acceleration. So this is the million-dollar question, isn't it? If it wasn't a comet, if our best natural explanation just doesn't fit the facts, what in the world was pushing this thing? Now, faced with this impossible observation, the scientific community did what it does best. It got creative. It proposed an invisible solution. And this was the leading theory for a good while. And you gotta admit, it's pretty clever. The idea goes that Oumuamua might be a brand new kind of comet, one made of solid, frozen hydrogen. Theoretically, this stuff could heat up and turn to gas, creating a push. But, and here's the genius part, it would do it without kicking up any visible dust. So you get the push, but you don't get the tail. Boom! It perfectly explains both mysteries. A nice, neat, natural explanation. But not so fast. This theory had some, massive holes in it. First off, we've never ever seen a hydrogen iceberg like this before, anywhere. But the real killer is the physics. Solid hydrogen is incredibly fragile. The faint warmth of deep space should have caused it to completely evaporate over its millions of years long journey. For it to survive, it would have to be impossibly young or have come from an unbelievably cold place in space. So in the end, the hydrogen ice theory wasn't really a solution at all. It was more like an act of intellectual gymnastics. It explained away one mystery, the push, by inventing an object that had two even bigger mysteries attached to it, how it was made and how it possibly could have survived the trip. It was, as our source puts it, a comforting illusion. But hold on, because the phantom push wasn't the only weird thing going on here. Completely separate from the acceleration, there was another bizarre feature that justified explanation: its shape. As Oumuamua was tumbling along, astronomers noticed its brightness was changing a lot. By a factor of 10, in fact. It would get super bright, then super dim, over and over. Now, that tells you right away that this thing isn't a sphere or some lumpy potato-shaped rock. The only way to get that kind of change in brightness is if the object's shape is incredibly extreme, way more extreme than any natural object we've ever seen. So, the data pointed to two possibilities. Either it was a long, thin cigar shape, or it was a flat, wide disk, like a pancake. Now, if it was a cigar getting pushed by some kind of jet, it would be tumbling all over the place. But we know its movement was really orderly. So what about the other option, a thin, flat disk? What's that the perfect shape for? A sail, specifically a light sail, designed to catch the pressure from starlight to get a smooth, steady push. You know, exactly like the one we observed. So what are the chances that nature, all on its own, would create an object that's kilometers wide, but maybe only millimeters thick, and that this paper-thin thing would survive a journey across interstellar space? Well, the statistical odds are pretty much zero. So now you have two totally independent lines of evidence, the weird push and the weird shape, and they are both pointing in the same very radical direction. So we have this phantom push and this impossible shape, and both of them seem to defy any natural explanation. This is where our guide, Zoran, says the mystery actually moves beyond just astronomy. He suggests that when the data creates a paradox this deep, it stops being a problem about space and starts being a problem about our own minds. When you're confronted with a puzzle like this, a smooth push with no engine, a flat shape that shouldn't exist naturally, it creates this deep, nagging uncertainty. Zoran borrows a cool concept from yogic philosophy for this feeling. He calls it the prana of doubt. Prana means life force or vital energy, and his point is that this uncomfortable, confusing feeling of doubt isn't a failure. It's actually the essential energy we need to evolve our thinking. Zoran says this doubt hits us on three different levels. First, there's our primal need for security. Is it a harmless rock or a threatening piece of technology? That question creates anxiety, so we desperately want to cling to the safe, natural explanation. Then there's our logical brain, our need for truth. The facts just don't add up, and that creates cognitive dissonance. And finally, there's our intuition. Our minds are just racing, trying to reconcile the elegant geometry we see with the assumption that it has to be natural. And this leaves us with a huge choice. It's a fork in the road. Down one path, we can invent more and more elaborate, unprovable explanations, like invisible ice, just to protect our current view of the universe. Or we can take the other path and accept the simplest explanation that actually fits all the data, that the weird shape and the smooth push aren't bugs, they're features, because it was designed that way. In the end, this whole mystery isn't just about an object in space. It's really a mirror. It forces us to ask ourselves, where else in our own lives are we inventing our own invisible ice? What complicated, convenient story are we telling ourselves to avoid a simpler, but maybe more challenging reality? What's the phantom push in your life that you might be refusing to see? That is something to think about.